Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
You need some more time?
I don't need a straw. Hello, everybody. I'm Tom. I'm a grateful alcoholic. What a pleasure and honor to be participating in this meeting. I want to take the opportunity to thank all the people that made this possible. Nepotism is alive and well in Alcoholics Anonymous. My sister-in-law, Jeannie, and the committee, and Reza for being a wonderful host, and it's just awesome. But I don't think it was too cool, those folks making fun of me earlier tonight. And I'm the guy who thought that when they said, when all else fails, sleep with another, and you'll find out that my personal adventures before and after make clear that I am an alcoholic, and I'm in the right room here. I have a lot of profound things to say. I just hope a couple of them come out tonight. I can tell you that my sobriety date is June 25th, 1984, and for that I'll be eternally grateful. And I owe a debt of gratitude to the people of the Valley here. I moved here when I had just under a year of sobriety, and I was a Chandlerite over there and used to hang out with Radford, Unit A, Studio 12, and a few of the other places. So for all those guys that have more than 26 years, thank you so much for having Alcoholics Anonymous in place and well when I came here. And my life has been incredible because of you. I started off drinking in high school. I was invited to an upper class party. It was a typical high school party. It was a kegger party. And I'd had a few drinks before that, but this is the first time I went out to go drinking. And they had the keg in the center of the room. They had the guys on the wall to the right, the girls on the wall on the left, and I floated over, got my beer, went back to my wall. I came back, got my second beer, went back to the wall, and by the third beer, I was the bartender, and I was pouring one for you and one for me. And I absolutely love the effect produced by alcohol. I don't know about you, but growing up, I had a lot of fears. I was afraid of those big, tough football players. I was afraid to talk to the girls, and by the third beer, I wasn't afraid of nothing. I was kissing on the girls. I was running around. I became the big guys who were my best buddies then, and I was to do that night everything I was going to do in the next 15 years of my drinking. I fell down, I threw up, and I was thrown out. And I got to practice throwing out the next night. I was just like, oh my God. And I was on the swim team. And so the next morning I had to go to swim workout on Saturday morning, and I'm doing these laps in the pool, and I got like 2 lines in my lane, and I'm doing these flip turns, and I'm rolling, and I couldn't tell when to stop. And I'm just like, God, get me through this, and I will never do this again. And I made it through that workout, and we hit the showers, and we were just about ready to leave. And a couple guys come running up and said, Tom, we saw you at that party last night. You were so funny. We're going to another party tonight. You want to come? I said, sure. And it was that immediate gratification, you know, that instant recognition. I just absolutely loved it. I loved everything about it, you know. And I'm addicted in just about anything I do. I don't know. I was into sports. Water polo player, swimmer. My senior year, they asked me to run in the cross-country team, and so I ran the 2-mile, and then they said, you want to run the track team? I ran the mile, the 2-mile, and the mile relay, and then I had to make the swim workout. And your body puts off these natural forms of endorphins, which is a natural form of heroin, and you know, you hear people talk about being addicted to running. Well, that was me. And I went on after that. I did pretty well. I got into sports pretty heavily. I went on and got into kayaking stuff. Went on to college, and I started sliding away from sports. They were a little bit too much tough on the workouts. I went from swimming and water polo and running to snow skiing. I liked the workouts better. and especially hitting the lodge and having the hot toddies at the end of a hard day, you know. And our school down there at Orange Coast College in Orange County didn't do well in the regular slalom and giant slalom events, but in the beer slalom and the wine slalom, we swept both men's and women up there at the All-Cal Carnival in Aspen, and I was proud to take home a couple trophies. And that's the kind of thing I did. I ended up going to Orange Coast, then transferred up to USC, and I think I developed one of the first signs of alcoholism very early. It's that immense capacity to consume mass quantities of alcohol. All of a sudden, I was the guy with the hollow leg, the one could outdrink everybody. I was the designated drunk driver, you know. It's like, you know, they're having 3 or 4 beers, and I've had a couple cases, and they're like, can you drive? And you're like, I can race. I'm ready for Indianapolis 500. You know, that's the difference. My brother and sister are not alcoholics. They're normal drinkers. You know, they have 1 or 2 drinks, and I was sober about 1.5 years, and we had Thanksgiving at my sister's house. And we're sitting around, and I'm sober and everybody else is drinkers. And first of all, the math goes wrong right here. 8 people at dinner, they opened up 2 bottles of wine. They weren't magnums either. They were them little. And about halfway for dinner, I'm getting nervous. And I'm watching everybody's drinks and this, that, and the other. And, you know, my sister seems to be doing good. She's about halfway down that glass. And I grab a bottle. Would you like a little more? And she's like, no, thanks. I'm starting to feel it. And I'm like, that's the point, you know. And she goes, well, I don't like that sense of losing control. And my God, if you're like me, that's the only time I felt in control in my life. You know, I like to say I'm driving along and I have this K-crap radio blaring in my head. And after about that 4th shot of tequila, it's like turning on the wave. The mellow songs, you know, along the coast. Here we go. You know, I'm ready to have fun now. But they don't like that feeling of losing control. And I just didn't get that. I was at USC. I was studying once in a while, and I opened the door to this class, and I saw the professor. I dropped his class last semester, and I wasn't going to put up with him this time, and so I shut that door and walked away from school my senior year with less than 6 classes to graduate, and my dad was pissed. And you know, people were saying stuff like, see the world, join the Navy, and I'm like, not. Locked up on a boat with a bunch of guys? I don't think so. And a couple gals I was dating were flight attendants in the airline. I said, why don't you be a flight attendant? You would have a lot of fun. I said, a lot of fun? They said, a lot of fun. And so I started applying with the airlines. And this is back in the good old days. This is back when sex was safe and marijuana and cocaine were non-habit forming. And well, times changed, and I got hired by one of the airlines. I think there was one smart one. They said, no way. They didn't want anything to do with me. But I got hired with TWA, and I ended up moving to Kansas City for 6 weeks of training. And I like to say this was the good old days. This is back with 1976, 1978, the disco days. We were, you know, Donna Summers, the Bee Gees, Last Chance for Romance, and you're looking at one of the original disco ducks. And I was getting paid to hop on an aircraft and flirt as much as possible, hand out a few free drinks, and then dance the night away. You know, and it was a magical time. It was a lot of fun, and it was great. The only problem is I had something that was progressive and terminal, and I didn't know it. You know, and you know, I'm in construction now. You know, and back then, you know, they were really sticklers about showing up to work on time, and and you go out and party your brains out, and you oversleep a little bit. It's like, not in construction, you do that. You know, you go out, you come in, you're late, you run in, the foreman yells at you and says, you know, hey, get to work, you know, and your head's exploding, and you make it through the day. Not in the airlines. You go out, you dance the night away, you party your brains out, your head's exploding, you show up to work late, and your job's gone. And you get stuck in places like Dayton, and you got to explain things, you know. I mean, like, you know, and so, you know, immediately I found out that alcohol and alcoholics are like water. We kind of seek our own level, you know. And so we got a group of alcoholics that were together, and we bid flights together. And you have to slide an Al-Anon in there on occasion to keep an eye on you, you know, make sure you're all up and come down to the airport, you know. Carl Malden was doing a commercial for American Express. You know, don't leave home without it. Well, we were like, don't leave the hotel without me. You know, just make sure we get there. And I would make sure that I bid flights that left after noon. That was a good flight. I liked the flights that didn't leave in the morning. And so I started doing it. And like I said, I had something that was progressive and terminal, unbeknownst to me. And it was a lot of fun in the beginning. We did a lot of traveling. We were flying around, partying our brains out, having a great time. But like I said, you know, what's funny when you're 16 and 18, you know, and you fall down, you throw up on somebody. It's not funny when you're 27 throwing up on somebody's brand new carpet. You don't get invited back a lot, you know. And so I'm partying around, and I've got this thing going, and I started having problems. I'm starting to show up at work late, you know. I'm starting to reek a little bit, and, you know, go figure. Every time I'm showing up for work, we're short liquor or money. And so they had a position as a service manager, and they were in charge of the inventory, so I got that. And we didn't have any more problem, except for they make I wasn't no longer a senior guy. I was junior, and so I had to take whatever flights they give me. I got a lot of morning flights, and when I'm traveling around and I'm going out too late at night, and you show up in the morning flights, you know, that booze is starting to shake its way out of my system. And so I'm showing up, and the problem with the service manager is you got to serve coffee on them silver trays and china cups in first class. And so I've got this thing, and my hands are shaking like this, and would you like some coffee? And you're like, and they're like, yes, please, over the aisle here. That'd be great, yeah. And you're going, what's shaking more of me or the plane? And we're still parked at the gate. Anyway, I end up having a few problems with that, and alcohol was progressing and stuff, and it took a real nasty turn. You know, in the beginning I was drinking to have fun, and then I started having problems, and I started drinking in relationships, and I'd get drunk over them and stuff, and things at work were changing. And then I had a major crisis. My mom came down with terminal cancer, and I took a leave of absence from the airlines and moved home, and I wanted to make my mom proud. And I got a job with Motorola. I was selling those big, pagers. Remember those things? and phones and stuff like that. They were the big bricks in the whole back seat in the trunk. And like I said, alcoholics are like water. We start seeking our own level. So I found the other alcoholic, and he was the instructor and the trainer. Now, what we do after a week of training and stuff, like every evening we would go out for happy hour and talk about the day a little bit and have a few cocktails. Now, most of the people would have 2 or 3 drinks and stuff, have plenty of free appetizers in those days, and they would head home to their family and loved ones. Well, him and I, we'd get up and leave also, but we would go down to the next bar. And we started drinking there, and then we drink for a little bit, and then after about 11, 12 o'clock at night, he's getting tired. He's got to get home to his wife and his family, you know, so we would get up and we leave again, except I go down to the next bar. And I ended up in a little dive around the corner, you know, and Patrick's Pub on Harbor Boulevard and Costa Mesa, you know, and we'd be, and then we'd, of course, being helpful that I was, we'd lock the doors and I'd help clean up. And we'd leave about 4 in the morning and then have to do this over and over. And what was happening is that I couldn't deal with life on life's terms, and what the psychologists would love to call that is relief drinking. I'd go home and I would drink myself into oblivion every night because I couldn't really deal with life on life's terms. I couldn't deal with the reality of it. And what the bottom line is, I didn't want to go home and watch my mom deteriorate in front of my eyes. And before she passed away, we were able to sit down and we actually went over our lives and stuff. We laughed about the good times, we cried about the sad times, and we got current, you know. And one of the things she said before she passed away, she said, I want you to watch your drinking. She says, you're 100% Irish, second generation. You got alcoholism in your blood. You have a grandfather who died of cirrhosis of the liver. You had an uncle who was left a wife and 8 kids and never been seen since. And you had one that was a merchant marine who never drew a sober breath in port. And you're showing all the signs. Not a couple of them, not a few, all the signs. And after she passed away, I got to tell you, I was never more enabled in my life. Everywhere I went, people had, poor guy lost his mom, buy him around, da-da-da-da. People had vodka in the refrigerator, beers on, you know, on tap, whatever. Everywhere I went. And I used that a lot, and I drank through that pretty heavily. But I started watching my drinking. I ended up going back into the airlines, was flying around after the leave was over, and I started trying to control and enjoy my drinking. I was doing that, you know, starting to watch it, you know. But I can tell you, whenever I was trying to control my drinking, there was no enjoyment. And whenever I was enjoying it, there was no control. And And it being a good alcoholic, the problems started getting worse. The good times started getting shorter. But I love what Sandy B says. The equation's still balanced. And so I started having these problems, and it was starting to get noticed by other personnel that I worked with, by management, this, that, and the other. And I ended up going into my first treatment center. Somebody turned me in. I went and talked to these folks. I said, it's really hard to admit if you have a problem. And I said, this guy's stuttering all over the place. I'm like, what, with drinking? And he goes, yeah. He's all excited. It's a denial disease. I said, yeah, I got a problem with drinking. And I'm thinking, 9 out of 10 times I'm fine, but that 10th time's killing me. And they said, great, well, we got this stuff. So I talked to this person, and they're telling me stuff, and they had me fill out the questionnaire, and I answered them honestly as I could at the time, and I got a lot of those passes, And they said, my God, you're an alcoholic here. I said, whatever you. I said, didn't you read the answer sheet there? I just filled out. I told you what I drank like. And they said, well, there's a great test. They said, I said, okay, what's that? And they said, well, you have a choice of 2 or 3 drinks. And I said, well, they said, what, pick a drink of your choice. I said, beer. I drink beer. And they said, okay, well, you have a choice of 2 or 3. And I said, well, and you have to have them every day. I said, well, I don't drink every day. And they said, well, try. Oh, okay. And I'm thinking these Foster lagers, the 32, and they're thinking 8 ounce, So they said, do you want 2 or 3? I said, well, I'll take 3. And she said, we thought so. And the meeting was over, and I went out my way to try this controlled drinking thing. And I'm into it and doing real good. But I forgot to ask him one really important thing. How long do you want me to do this? And they said a year. I was kind of floored. Well, then I had another major crisis come up. Jimmy Carter won the election, and I went into this blackout. And so I guess I was an alcoholic, and so, I had to do something about it. So I went to my first tune-up center, a treatment center. It was down in Santa Ana. It was the Chalk Towers down there, one of the care units down. And so I'm going through this thing. I wanted the one in Newport so I could bring my surfboard, but they didn't want me to do that. And so I'm going through this thing, and I'm getting sober, and I'm loving this, and this is kind of cool, and I get my first 30 days, and I get out, and I'm going along, grabbing chips, going to meetings. And I was really enjoying the heck out of this. But see, I'm a real alcoholic. I'm not a drug addict and any of that stuff. So I continue to smoke pot and snort cocaine. And if you snort a couple lines of coke and you go in an AA meeting and they ask for a burning desire, your hand goes up. I love this sobriety thing. Let me tell you, I wonder if this is. And they're like, nothing from the neck up, please, And eventually they stopped calling on me, and so I stopped going. And then I had another major crisis. I was stood up on a date, and and I did exactly what it said to do in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I stepped to the nearest bar. I tried some controlled drinking, had 3 beers, and met Miss Right Now, and had a meaningful overnight relationship. And I'm patting myself on the back the next day, and I'm going, yeah, now you know. It's like you hadn't done all those things yet. You hadn't lost the house, hadn't lost a wife, of course, I never had a house, never had a wife, but, and I thought to myself, and besides, if it ever gets really bad, I'll know what to do. I'll just go back to them damn meetings. And so I spent this next 3 years of sheer hell fulfilling chapter 3 in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, unbeknownst to me because I hadn't read the book, I hadn't got a sponsor. It's really tough to work any of them steps if you don't do that. And so by the age of 29, I was ready to come back. And I got sober on a New Year's resolution. As you know, my sobriety age is June 25th. I was getting around to it. Come on. And and I went through I checked into another tune-up center. But what happened is the reality of it is that I built this sandcastle of a life, and the tide was coming in. Everything that I held as self-evident truths was getting washed away. I got to the point where I couldn't even believe my own lies, and you go into the office and they're looking at you and you're lying, and they know you're lying, you're lying, but they can't prove it. And I remember this is a true story. The guy went, he goes, I get called, Tom, I got to talk to you. And I said, about such and? He goes, no, but I want to hear about that too. I get into his office and he goes, tell me about what happened New Year's Day in Seattle. And I said, do you want my story or the truth? Well, let's hear both of them. And anyway, long story short, I ended up going into treatment. And I didn't do it that day. I remember that, I got away with something somehow. And I said, I got a problem and I'll go ahead and take care of it. And he said, okay. And so, and what happened was I didn't take care of it. I'd get 2 weeks, I'd get 3 weeks, I'd get a couple days, I'd get a month, I'd get another couple of days, and then I'd see her and want to go have a drink. Okay. And so by June, like I said, I was about ready to get fired. And I knew it, and I was driving to work, and it was a bright, sunny day. Let me tell you this other part. And I'm going to work, and I said, nobody gets sober on a bright, sunny day. That's going to be my day. But just before this, it wasn't even too much longer before this, I was going to this Tuesday night meeting like every week, and da-da-da-da-da, and I'm going, and this girl looks at me and says, do you have a home group? I said, no. She said, would you like this to be your home group? I said, I'd love that. That'd be nice. They said, when's your sobriety date? And I said, today. And she put down her pen and picked up a pencil and wrote it in the book. That wasn't my sobriety day. This woman had a lot of insight and judgment, but so it's this bright sunny day, and they said, so I turned my car around and I'm heading home, and I'm going to call in, and once I got the car turned around, I said, what a better day to get drunk. And so I picked up a case of beer, and I went home, and I called them, and I called in sick and told them I'm going to get sober. And they said, okay, when are you going in today? I said, no. I went, today we're getting drunk, tomorrow we're getting sober. And they said, drink up to the door. And I said, okay. And that was my last hurrah, and it was just like the same thing. I'd been talking about what I was going to do and what I had done for the last 10 years of my life. I sat on bar stools that whole time. And I talked about my events in high school and college and stuff and all these dreams and aspirations. And I sat there day in and day out looking at the man in the mirror in those bars. And I can tell you what truly brought me to Alcoholics Anonymous was that emptiness and loneliness that a few do. And you guys have just brought me out of the gates of hell. And it is phenomenal. I ended up going to that treatment center. I wanted to go to meetings. I didn't want to go to the group therapy things. I didn't want to do the psycho whatever. I just wanted to go to meetings. Well, we had to bring somebody else from the treatment center with us. We had to get somebody from outside to pick us up and take us to meetings. It was just like a nightmare doing this stuff. So I finally got out, and, it's amazing. I got to see the records from that a couple years later, and they said a whole bunch of stuff that wasn't very kind. They said, likes to play the role of the counselor, not the patient. Lacks insight and judgment. And this is the better. This one kept me sober 5 years. Chances of sobriety, nil. I went back and took a 5-year chip just because they pissed me off. I can tell you as a fact, it doesn't matter why you get sober, what your reasoning, who you're doing it for. Just do it and you'll get it. It's funny. So I got out and I hit a lot of meetings. It's amazing when I'm doing that exit interview, they go, well, how many meetings are you going to go to a week? And I said, 7. Oh, be realistic. Okay, 14 to 21. And they didn't like any of that stuff. And that's what I did. I became a meeting addict. My experience is this, folks. I came to, and I came to believe. And thank God for all the meetings around there. You'll hear people running around the valleys and all over this country bashing meeting goers. Meeting makers don't necessarily make it. Well, that's true, but bar makers don't make it either. I'd rather see you here than in a bar. I'd rather see you here in Alcoholics Anonymous, even in a bad meeting. If it's a bad meeting, you got over a year of sobriety. What are you sharing at that meeting that makes it so bad? Or what are you not saying at those meetings? What you got to do, if you come to Alcoholics Anonymous looking to see what you can get, you're going to get alcoholism. That's all we got. But if you come here to see what you can give, that's what unlocks the keys of the kingdom around here. And I got to tell you, my first year, I was a flight attendant, right? Coffee, tea, or me. I'm hopping around the country, and my home group was Anywhere USA Tonight. And They taught me, pick up the phone in the hotel. We didn't have cell phone. Ask for information, ask for Alcoholics Anonymous, and say, where's your meeting? I can tell you that I had to hitchhike, I had to walk, I had to get to the hotel to drop me off, I had to take cabs. I had a police officer drive me one time, but I got to a meeting every night. And after about 30, 60, 90 days, I started getting my opinion back, and I was tired, long day, I needed to rest, it's been a rough day. And they told me in my groups that if it wasn't an excuse not to go to drinking, don't use it as an excuse not to go to a meeting. That eliminated just about everything for me. I don't know about you folks, but no problem. And so I started going, and sometimes I got there just in time to hold hands and say the Lord's Prayer, and then I found it a miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous, one drunk talking to another. I got sober in those coffee shops around the country. I walked in late, and all that stuff. I mean, did it ever bother anybody to go into a bar because you didn't know anybody? Or that you might be late? No, I was there. Last call, 7 drinks, please. No, we can only give you 4. Oh, okay. Got a friend coming. Does that count? I want you to know that I had the honor and privilege of being kicked out of my first Alcoholics Anonymous meeting just about 3 weeks ago. Yeah, I showed up late. And they locked the doors at whatever. I walked in and the door wasn't quite shut tight enough. And a guy walks me out and says, I got to talk to you. And I said, what? I'm on here for the meeting. He says, come on, I got to talk to you. Whatever, maybe he's new or something. And I walk outside and he goes, we shut the doors at 6:05. I said, great. I said, but I'm not from around here. And he goes, that's our group conscience, sorry. I said, really? I said, you locked the doors from alcoholics that are trying to get to a meeting. Okay. And I live in Las Vegas. Does that count for anything? He goes, oh, well, welcome. I said, well, F you too. So I came back and I sat in the meeting next week. I got there early, and they asked, does anybody have a problem? And I kept my mouth shut. And then I came back the next week, and I talked to a guy. He goes, hey, that's 2 weeks in a row. I said, no, it's like 3 weeks in a row. Really? I must have not been paying attention. No, I said, you probably were. That's okay. And so then they ended up, they asked again, does anything bother anybody? And I kept my mouth shut. The topic was honesty. And so the guy calls on me. I said, well, folks, I'm Tom Las Vegas. I said, I'm a grateful alcoholic, and I'm a liar, cheat, and a thief. And I started the meeting off by lying to y'all. I said, and then I went on to my story, and I shared about my experience, strength, and hope. And I told him, I said, my phone number is area code 702-592-0100. I want you to write it down. I'll say it again for you. And I did. And I said, I want you to hand that phone number to anybody who walks up to this door late. I said, thank God for the meetings around the room who aren't trying to create a nice little elite boys club or might be trying to teach alcoholics a lesson. I said, you can tell an alcoholic, you just can't tell him much. I said, you can show us everything by your examples. I learned courtesy in meetings by people who were courteous in meetings. I learned how to show up on time and early and help set up, and how to stay late by guys in Alcoholics Anonymous. They didn't tell me, they showed me. And, I'm going to be one of the guys, be honest with you. I said, you have the potential to be a great group, but right now you suck. I said, if even one guy goes out that door and dies over that resentment alone, I said, it is one too many deaths. I said, so please, give him my phone number, and besides, I want to warn you, don't mess with a guy who has a microphone last. I'm speaking at a convention in a week. They're going to hear all about you. So I'd like an extra copy for the group in Riverside.
No problem.
Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help another alcoholic. Nobody asked me how much time I had. Was I hurting? Do you think you might drink over this? Sorry, I didn't know the rules, but yeah. So anyway, that's a fun thing. But I had a lot of fun. In my first year of sobriety, I traveled around. I went to meetings, whatever else. And I started making amends without consulting my sponsor at the time. And I ran across a gal I dated when I was drinking, and we had a very terrible evening. And she was still pretty, though. And so I apologized to her for being such an ass that night, and I really like to make it up to her, and would she go out with me again? And she said yes, and we started dating, and she lived here in, I got sober in St. Louis, Missouri. She lived here in North Hollywood on Chandler Boulevard, just around the corner from when you go west on Chandler. It's a one-way street. It's on the right. And so being in the airlines, I would fly out here on my days off, and I was a visitor from out of state. And then on my days working, I flew flights that laid over in Los Angeles, so visitor not working. So anyway, I was there a lot. And finally, after about a week of this stuff, the whole group's going, put your hand down. You're here more than the regulars. Didn't know it was a no-no. And so they took a group conscience in Missouri and said, yeah, go home, move in with her. What the hell? And what happened was I ended up getting laid off in St. Louis from my job. And then I was transferred to Los Angeles. Now, I've been trying for 10 years to get based in L.A. God's will, right? So I called her and said, hey, guess what? I got transferred there. I'm moving in. And she says, wait, we got to talk about this. I said, we'll talk when I get there. I loaded up. I was gone. And it was great. We were over there at Chandler, you know, and I'm flying and doing this stuff. And we'd get into these tiffs and these arguments. And I'd go down to Chandler, and I'd see old Ernie sitting at the table. And Ernie, you know, she's doing this and she's doing that. He goes, hey, work on yourself. I said, but you work on yourself. I said, but you said, work on yourself. So I'd go back home and say, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to do that. And she goes, yes, you were wrong. Back to the meeting, you know. And I told everybody at the group that we had a marvelous relationship. We're both working on my character defects. And so we're in and out. We're doing this thing, you know. And then I had a bad week. I was sober about a year and a half. And on Monday, we went on strike. I lost the job I'd had for 10 years. On Wednesday, I got a letter from the IRS for $2,800. And on Friday, she threw me out. Didn't want this bum around. And I'm pulling my hair out, and I'm going to the picket line. I'm going to meetings. I'm doing this. And I thought about drinking. I thought about it real hard. And I thought, you know, God, I said, geez, you know. And I thought, you know, that no matter how much I drank, they weren't going to call that strike off. And no matter how toasted I got, the IRS wasn't going to call me up and say, hey, Tom, don't worry about it. We got lots of people owe us money. Just don't do that again. No, you know, that wasn't going to happen. And if she didn't like me sober, we already proved that she didn't like me drinking. So there wasn't a single one of those problems that drinking wouldn't make worse. You know, there wasn't a single one of those situations that drinking wouldn't make worse. And my brain just went click. And for some reason, there's no longer a solution to my problems. And I just kept doing it. I just started doing it. I made this commitment to start doing this thing. And so we do this, and after about 3 months, they called a strike off, and I'd been replaced. And, you know, for months over at Chandler Lodge, they're going, hey, you know, getting hungry, find a job, jerk. You know, they're hiring over to the Sportsman's Lounge over here. Hey, check in with Harry Gregory. He's a contractor. He needs some laborers. And that Friday, I had 2 jobs, working at the Sportsman's Lodge, you know, waiting tables at night, and from 10 o'clock at night till 2 in the morning, or till 6 in the morning, I'm running red iron up 3 flights of stairs at the Beverly Center where they're doing a tenant improvement job over there. And I was about ready to launch on a new career, you know, and I just started going from there. And after about 2 months of working in the construction thing, another guy picked me up on another one. Now he took off, and I'm an assistant superintendent, and I get another job. And after that was finishing up, one of the carpenters come up, grabbed me by the shirt collar, and dragged me down to the union hall and signed me up as a journeyman carpenter. And I launched on a new career. He said, how much are they paying you? I said, $10 an hour. I just gotten a raise. And they said, you deserve a decent living. And they took me down here. And I said, but I don't know what I'm doing. He goes, hey, no problem, man. Just suit up and show up. Here, read this book and call me if you got any questions. So you suit up and show up, read the book, and call. I said, you know Bill W.? He said, who? I said, never mind. that little brain cell I'd fried, it'd come flickering on, you know, it said, practice these principles in all your affairs, you know. And so I'm shooting up and showing, he goes, by the way, you know, you're going to go up there, they're going to fire you after about 3 days because you don't know nothing. He said, then you're going to last a week, and then you'll last 2 weeks, and then you'll last a month, and they'll keep firing you, but they'll call it a layoff. And at the end of the year, you'll have experience. You'll be able to hang on to a job. So this is cool. And so and he said, if they ask you if you know how to do something, tell them, yeah, I know several different ways to do it. You show me the way you want it done, I'll do it that way. We don't have no problems. It's okay. Sound good. So I show up at this job, and I last 2 weeks, and they fired me because I didn't know anything, you know. I thought that was pretty cool. And then I go on the next job, and I last 2 weeks, and they made me a foreman. I said, but I don't know anything. They said, oh, you're so funny. And I said, no, I'm serious. I used to be a stewardess. Yeah, right. Yeah. And he said, no. But I pulled into this job, and I show up, and I'm filling out the paperwork, right? You know, and another guy's filling out his. There's two of us carpenters got this call, and all of a sudden, this guy comes running in. He's a foreman, and he says, hey, my welder didn't show up. He says, you guys know how to weld? And I looked at him. He looked at me. He said, no. I said, yeah. He goes, there's your welder. And he said, oh, you know. So we take off, and then we're jumping his truck. We're heading down the job site, and I'm going, by the way, it's been a long time since I've done any welding. And I'm thinking to myself, like this lifetime. And but you show me the way you want me to do it. I'll do it that way. We don't have no problems. And he laughed. He goes, that's okay. We don't need no fancy beads. We just need to tack weld this chamfer strip. And I'm getting these visuals, tacks, beads. And I'm like, God, you're with me or I'm screwed, you know. And so we get out there, and don't worry, it wasn't anything structural, folks. It was just a little metal thing. They're pouring concrete, and they just want to know where to stop pouring, and so that was fine. And so, but man, by the end of the day, I'm doing these fancy beads and everything, you know. It was great. So I just started suiting up and showing up, and I got to tell you, you know, when I got out of that treatment center, I was telling you about it, a couple of the questions they asked, they said, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, I don't know, and it's probably the only honest thing I said in the whole time. I just want to be a happy, productive member of society. You know, and let me tell you, after about a year in this stuff, I ended up over here around the corner here on the Trillium buildings. And I had something to do with that building from 3 floors in the earth all the way to the heliport on the roof. And that thing's going to last 100 years, you know. And I was sitting back in this dirt pile, and the kind of glow came through the clouds seemed to be parting, and the sun was coming out. It was the end of the day, and I had blood all over me, and I was sweating, and I was for the first time in my life, there wasn't an audience, there wasn't anything else. I'd been a productive member of society. And, you know, you can't take that away from you. You know, if you want feelings of self-worth, you got to do something worthwhile. And Alcoholics Anonymous is worthwhile. You got to go out there, and it's not for you. What's in the meeting for me is who can you help today? And that's what unlocks the keys of the kingdom. It was a bad time during that time where the economy was doing whatever else, and I remember struggling some of those times. And I used to do this, take a drunk to lunch week, you know. I'd go find the shakiest newcomer and then take him lunch, say, I need somebody to talk to, and I'd buy him lunch, you know. And we would sit there and do that. And I found a neat thing. If you want to get a job, you go grab somebody else by the arm, and you pull them around, and you show them how to get a job. And we'd go knock on doors. And I have a couple friends here who know that's the truth. One of them retired from the studios not too long ago. We had fun. We were knocking on doors. We got so much rejection. We both got fired. Heck, one time I remember that we developed friendships that are so unique and priceless. This is a true story. We're working on a building down here at Anaheim Stadium. We're doing the Hilton Suites over there, and we're up there, and I'm working with the engineer at night. They kind of liked me for some reason, so I got to stay late, and so I'm working a 23-hour day. And doing this thing, I'm pulling a tape measure, and I step back, and I step off the building. And I throw my arms back, and I grab the rebar, and I sit on a plank that was there, thank God, right? This guy in the back of the room pops up in a dead sleep in the middle of the night. God, I had this dream about you. The next morning he's like, man, you stepped off the building over here near the elevator. I go, I did. And we have connections here, you know. But we sit there and do this stuff at Alcoholics Anonymous. We just keep suiting up and showing up, you know. We do the deal. Your lives are important. You know, we have to sit there and do it for ourselves. We can't stay sober on our own. We can do it together. And I got to tell you, I've been through a lot of hard times there. I ended up getting into that one day. I'm going down doing a responsible thing. I'm voting in Orange County. You know, I'm going to meetings. I'm doing the deal. And there's a big fire at Universal Studios back then. I'm going, well, there's work for somebody. And I end up getting that job too. And we end up going on. I ended up going through that. I worked 5 years in that and just had a blast. Now, looking back on this stuff, I was thinking to myself, this is incredible. What a life. You know, I have a wonderful career, got to do this stuff. And looking back on it, you could have never proven it to me in the moment. But that week where I lost the job, lost the relationship, and got the letter from the IRS was the best week of my life. It took me from being around the program to being in the program. Because I was traveling, I only had home group here, coming in late, leaving quick, whatever else. All of a sudden, it opened up my dance card. Now I'm on a regular schedule. And I like to say back then, I got this commitment sponsor. His name's Ron C. Ron went around, and a commitment sponsor is somebody who runs around and volunteers you for everything that opens up in AA. Next thing you know, I'm secretary at Chandler Lodge. I'm on this thing. I'm running bingo at Impact House or somewhere else, and we're doing this. And I got H&I. They started me out on Friends of Warm Springs, and I got involved in this convention committee. I was in the hospitality room with Ron. And all of a sudden, I had commitments 7 days a week. I go to speaker meetings. I go to MinStags. Not too often. There weren't enough women in them, but I did go. And I'm loving the sobriety thing. And so I'm going to Chandler, and I keep asking, I see this girl, she's a very pretty woman, and I'm asking her out to coffee, and then she keeps turning me down, you know, and finally she says, you know, you're too young for me. I said, well, you got a younger sister. And she said, yes, and that's my wife right here, Lori. And now you know why the spiritual speaker's on Sunday. So if you think you got a saint here, think twice. And my dear friends, my good friends in Alcoholics Anonymous, like this play here, ran up to Lori and said, stay away from him. He's going to break your heart. He's going to leave you, and you're going to drink and die. Like I said, you can always tell an alcoholic. You can't tell him much. Actually, that's the key around here. If you want to get a newcomer to do something, tell him not to. So I got to tell you, she's the light of my life. And we've been together over 18 years now, and married. And we've been together 22 years. It's been a long time. We've been trudging this happy road together, and and that's a long time for a guy whose idea of a long-term relationship is both Friday and Saturday night, you know. And I got the package plan. I got the kids, and I got the guinea pig, and we got sick a lot. But we had all these pets. We got cats and all this stuff, and you know, and it was so wonderful. We've started dating. The first date, I come over there, and her little 10-year-old daughter just comes over and plops down between us and glares at me. 13, we're engaged, you know, it's almost 14, and, you know, we're getting married. My sponsor's there. My dad's doing the ceremony. My sponsor runs up to my to me and my dad. He says, now, if you want out of this, I can get you out of here right now. My dad said, hell you can. I'll slap a bench warrant on his ass so fast and make your head spin. No getting out now. And, but it was incredible. And the little daughter now is in tears. She's sobbing. She's just... No, not for joy, folks. She lost the battle, but the war was on. And great job. I was now a stepfather, accountable, responsible, and no authority. You can read that one in the paper, you know. I guess it bring lots of expendable income. The war was on, and I couldn't tell her nothing. She's an alcoholic just like we were, and by 13, 14, 15 years old, we're checking her into a treatment center at 14 and a half. She'd been tested positive for drugs and alcohol, and you know, and she was done, you know. And through the grace of God and this fellowship, she's been sober ever since. Yeah. And she's just an absolute light of my life also. I mean, our relationship is unique and prized. I mean, you can't even go it. It makes me cry thinking about her. We started off so hard and everything else, and several years back, she got engaged. She didn't get married, but she got engaged, and she asked me to walk her down the aisle. And, you know, God, you know, if I don't do anything else, I've already been overpaid in Alcoholics Anonymous way too much. You know, I'm one of those guys in Alcoholics Anonymous who's not a saint. I suffer from the delusion that I can rest satisfaction and happiness. I just manage well. My problem is I get all these ideas. And, you know, alcohol, I don't know about you guys, but this is this alcoholic. It's like, ready, shoot, aim. Just missed it, man. Just missed it. But I keep showing up and doing the deal and helping it out. I kept a rule 62. Don't take yourself too much serious. I just keep backing into these situations and I keep getting out, you know, thank you, God, you know. And I'm the guy who drives, they say to Chandler a lot. I heard they say, you know, the guy with the stagecoach got 6 horses, you know, going up to the cliff, and the first 3 go. You go, hey, God, take it. And, you know, as you're going over, it's like, God, how could you do this to me? You know? Construction has been an awesome life for me. I moved, I did the studio thing, whatever. I tried to make my fortune in real estate. We moved right after the Northridge earthquake to Las Vegas, and I'm going to do it in real estate. And after 3 months, I went broke again, so I had to. And you know, if you ever have a bad day, go down to Skid Row and tell them your problems. So I go down there to the recovery center right there in Vegas, and I'm telling them, you know, did all these things, these escrows all fill out, we're broke, and I got to fall back on my career at $22 an hour, and I'm not getting the sympathy here. And I walked away laughing at myself again, you know, and I was back swinging a hammer and stuff, and a guy in there ended up, anyway, long story short, I get pulled out of the office. This guy makes me assistant project manager, and I go on and I call my dad a year later, and I'm in Parker, Arizona, and I'm the project engineer on this thing. He goes, "You're what? Aren't you supposed to go to school for stuff like that? You're building a building, you're the engineer? I mean, yeah, but, well, how did you do that?" "Well, I drank a lot, and I quit, and I got this new thing, you know, and I got a new employer, and, you know." So I'm doing this thing, and then I'm back in the field as a superintendent, and I love that part of it. I ended up doing some of that, and it's given me a wonderful life, and I've been able to start traveling again for that. Oh, great. You know, I'm away from the wife, and I'm down in Florida. And one of my amends that I did with Greg W. was I read in my inventory, and he said, "Okay, well, you got to make amends here. So you got to learn Spanish and help Latino community in any way you can." Okay, great. So I'm grabbing Rosetta Stone, I'm grabbing these, that wasn't around there, but I'm grabbing tapes and I'm learning. And I get to Florida, and I'm in charge of over 500 guys from South America, Central America, and Mexico also. And so I'm getting my nerve up to go to Spanish-speaking meetings. And I really want to help out, you know, but, you know, I'm kind of nervous. They're not going to want this gringo there, you know, my Spanish is terrible. And so I finally walk in 3 weeks later, and here's a guy on the phone with his sponsor in Tennessee. He'd been waiting 3 weeks alone for somebody to walk in the doors while I'm getting up my courage. So I go up and I grab another book. I get an English one and a Spanish one, and I hand him the English one. I said, "You read this part and I'll read this part." And so I'm reading the Spanish, he's reading the English, and we go around for a couple weeks, and then the thing started filling up with like Spanish-speaking people. And so we went on to that, and I'm learning a lot. And I learned a lot of adjectives that probably won't be used tonight, but they swear in those meetings. And so we're getting along pretty good. So I'm doing well, and I come back to Vegas every 2 weeks, and I'm doing this, and I'm getting invited to speak somewhere. So I'm going to go speak, and I'm driving, and I'm in a Mercedes. So I got a nice car, and I got this suit on with a tie, and I pull up, and here come these lowriders next to me. Boom, boom, you know, and they got the bandanas and everything. So I ábreme mi ventana, see? And I look over and I go, "Hey, cabrón, ¿qué transito por tu venas, huh? Pura fibra?" And they're like laughing, and they're looking at this dubbed-in movie, you know, and they're still back there laughing at that stop sign. And so Greg, I took your right advice, and I learned it, and I got pretty good at it. So I'm still far from being fluent, but I'm still working on it. And you know, it was an awesome experience. I have some unique friendships now that are just priceless. These guys are calling me. Some are back in Mexico, some are still here, some come back and forth regularly. But it's a neat deal. It's a neat deal. Some are legal today because of what they did here, and it's awesome. You know, it's just an awesome experience. If you reach out and touch the heart of another person, you know, that's what it's all about here. I'm kind of all over the board today from what I normally talk, but I got to tell you that I just absolutely love the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's all about not drinking one day at a time. I can tell you this experience where I go to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, and I go to help them, and I benefit. So, long story short, I get this wonderful opportunity. I come home, things aren't going well, the economy's starting to slide. My wife goes, "You want to move to Hawaii?" I said, "Yeah." So we go on vacation, and I never come back. I move over there, and, you know, it's happy, joyous, and free. She sells my stuff over here, the cars and everything, and we move over to Maui, and we're just having a great time. I got a great job on the Kaanapali Ocean Resort, and we're active involved in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's amazing that I go into the job site, and they go, "How do you know all these people?" We're going to restaurants. I know the waiters. I know the cook. I know the maitre d'. Didn't you just get here? You know, I got family all over, and... So I ended up doing this thing, and it's like, I'd like to tell you at this point, we trudged the road of hap, skipped, and jumped, the happy road of destiny, and life was just perfect. Not. Real estate didn't go well for Lori there. My job was doing great. We decided to put her on a boat, move her back. We'd commute back and forth to see each other. Double winners, right? We put her on a boat, I wave goodbye, I go to work the next morning, and they lay off 7 out of 10 of us. I look up and I go, "I guess God didn't trust me alone in paradise." So I come back, and I got to tell you, the last couple of years have been one hell of a struggle. It has been the toughest of my life financially. I'm 56 years old, and I'm doing this stuff, and I'm getting jobs, and I worked probably 7 or 8 months out of the last 2 years. And that's not what Alcoholics Anonymous is about. It's keeping knowing the fact that, you know, we have a new employer. God's going to do it. And I kept trudging that forward. I kept my head up. I kept going to meetings, kept being sober to other people. I had to sit there and reach out to the newcomer. I'm down there in Skid Row. Whenever I have a problem, I go down to Skid Row. You know, that's one of the things. I also do a lot of prison stuff. I love going to prison. If you're not going to prison, you got to go, because you know what? You don't have enough gratitude until you come out of a couple meetings from there, you know, because I like to whine. I suffer from that thing. I want more, you know, not much, just more. And if you got it first, I want a better one. And what I'm doing is we're doing this thing, and I get this job 2 years ago, it was about a year and a half ago, and it's 114 degrees outside. And I'm doing this framing thing. I'm not in charge. I'm not pointing. I'm showing up because somebody called me, and they thought I was somebody else at the other Tom Smallwood in Vegas. And but I took the job, and they said, "We got 6 weeks of work here." And 6 months later, they finally laid me off. It was 114 degrees outside, but they just put the glass up. It was 132 inside. I'm like, what did I do to piss you off, you know? It's like, God won't ever give you any more than you can handle. Wish you would stop having so much confidence. Yeah, right. So let me tell you, there's been a lot of miracles that have happened in our lives. And another guy called me up. I'd worked for him before, and I got a job, and so we had a Christmas this year. And another guy in the program called me the other day. So nepotism is alive and well. And looks like I got an opportunity. I accepted. I'll be moving to the other side of the world. I'm going to be going to Saudi Arabia. And it's not the big money we thought it used to be like 5-6 years ago when the economy's good. But you know what? I'm not going to get rich, but it's an opportunity of life. It's an $800 million platinum lead job, and it's going to be green, and it's incredible, and it's a wonderful opportunity. So we're going to have to commute back and forth and stuff, because I don't think she'd do well in Saudi. And alhamdulillah, we're going to be learning some new language here. Shukran, afwan, masalama, habibi. So I've got another copy of Rosetta Stone, and here we go. God, who do you want me to sober up out there? Or at least maybe we can get them to laugh at each other. They could use a good joke over there, and here I am. I have a couple of things that I want to tell you about service and stuff. And that commitment sponsor was so unique and priceless. He told me how to get involved and start getting out of myself. And, you know, we got a guy in Vegas. And he runs around, and he started talking about his sponsor made him put a shopping cart back, you know, and he puts him back in there. And I'm sober 12, 15 years, and I'm going, I don't want no redneck having a better program than me. So I show up at the meeting next week, and they called on him, they called on me, and I said, I just want everybody to know that I put 2 shopping carts back this week, because I don't want no redneck out. And he laughed, but he's a priceless friend too. And what you do is you do these random acts of kindness and senseless acts of beauty. You know, get out of yourself. You want to have a good day, go out and do something nice for somebody and don't get caught. And that is incredible. The service part for me is I got involved in so many things. It was just unbelievable. But when I got here, I really had a problem with this God thing. And I said, I really don't like the God part. And they said, it's all God part. Oh. I said, but I have a problem with God. And this guy goes, you think you're having a problem with God? You should see the problem he's having with you. Walked off. And so I'm kind of stuck with that. And I'm going along, and I like science fiction. So I'm sitting there renting Star Wars more and more time, the old one, and I'm going along, and we're shooting at the saber stars and going after the Jedi and all this, and it said, let go, Luke, and use the Force. I said, my God, this is program. You know, I believe today that there's a positive and negative forces acting in this universe. You have the choice on a daily basis what you want to plug into. I believe the dark side of the Force is the selfishness, self-centeredness, and where's mine, and when's my ship coming in, and look out for number one, that kind of shit. If you want to have a bad day, just go home and think about it. Right into the toilet. If you want to have a good day, you get out there and start putting the needs of another ahead of your own. You start doing the stuff that we talk about in Alcoholics Anonymous. You go help that guy who's worse off than you. And you know what? That's what's going to unlock the keys of the kingdom around here. All of a sudden, you're going to start doing stuff over here, and boom, something pops up in your life over here. Just totally out of the blue, you know. It doesn't matter what you're doing over here, as long as you're doing what you think God's will is for you that day. Go out and help His children. This isn't overeaters, undereaters, or little Peters. This is Alcoholics Anonymous. Although some of us do suffer from that. You know. And what this is you help others and God helps you, okay? And I want to end it with this one last thing that, you know, life is an adventure and stuff. My sponsor, Ted Summers, right here. So if you don't like this talk, blame him. What he did is he told me that, you know, you got to do this all the time. But what I was doing is I had that Warm Springs commitment. So I'm out there picking people up, and I pick them up from all over the valley and drag them up on the 3rd Sunday of every month. I was doing this, and I'm tooling along one time. I'm meeting a bunch of the guys up there that from the tribe or the biker group, you know. So I'm tooling along, doing about 75, you know, and I'm listening to the mellow songs along the coast, you know. And an ad came on there for a new ride they put in back then, and the ad went something like this: Ninja, the black belt of roller coasters. You can't see the track. You never know when the next turn's coming. You never know when they'll throw a loop in there. And I said, my God, that's His program. You know, you hop on this thing because sobriety, you're getting your health back, you're going uphill, and of course you're feeling good. Man, you're not spending all that money these days. And all of a sudden she sits down, you go, my God, what a spiritual program indeed. I just love sobriety. And all of a sudden some old fart taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, buddy, read the book. You go, shut up back there. Check it out. I got a good program. And all of a sudden he goes, and it's going downhill faster and faster, and you're going, what's going on here? He says, work the steps. You go, yeah, okay, I get it. You know, and all of a sudden it goes right, and she went left, felt like she just tore your heart out. You go, what's going on? He goes, read the book. Then there goes a loop, and there goes your job out the window. You go, what's going on? He goes, read the book. I go, I lost it on the last turn. But just hang in there. Hang in there. You know, don't get out because the line got longer and the price of the ticket went up. Trust me, you know. Just don't get off, okay? Just hang in there, and all of a sudden the loop will go wrong, and all of a sudden, you know, you're going to be with the rest of them here. Oh, here comes another loop. Well, here we go, you know, throw your hands up. Whatever. Short form of the Serenity Prayer. And then and eventually it's going to go back uphill, and it's going to level out. You know what's going to happen? Some fool's going to sit down in front, you're going to tap on the front and go, hey, buddy, read the book and work the steps. Thanks for letting me share, everyone.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.